going to start with a prayer by Commissioner Thomas, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you've given us. We thank you for this rain that you bring to just nourish our earth. We just thank you for all blessings. We ask you to just be present with us tonight and just guide us and give us wisdom and discernment. And we ask you to just bless the citizens of our county. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we got the approval of the agenda. Any changes? I'd like to pull 9 off the consent item before I speak for anybody else.
Okay.
But Howard, is that the same thing?
No, it's 6, 7, and 9. I'd like
6, 7, and 9. Okay. Any other changes? Can we get a motion on it?
motion to approve the agenda as with modifications.
I second it.
Motion second. Any discussion? All for? Aye. Motion passes. Public hearing. Louis? David? Louis?
Good evening, Commissioners. This item is for the adoption of the amendment to Policy 1.3.1 of the infrastructure element. Basically, it strikes the policy that would require all existing and new septic systems to be inspected every 3 years. This item was transmitted to the state by the board, and we did not receive any comments from the state. And so staff is recommending that you adopt this policy to the comprehensive plan.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve to conduct the public hearing and adopt the amendment to Policy 1.3.1 of the infrastructure element of the comprehensive plan, eliminating the requirement for inspections of septic systems every 3 years.
I second it. Discussion amongst the boards. I got a couple citizens. You want to let them speak first?
Yes.
Chuck?
Chuck Hess, 112 Lake Ellen Circle. It's, one of the most important things for us is our water quality. And we know that septic systems fail. They fail on a regular basis. They're expensive to repair, and there's a real incentive for the homeowner just to let it slide. It's one of those tragedies of the commons is basically they get no cost and the cost is paid by everybody else. This is something we need to have an inspection program for, something to make sure the septic systems are working, and I would, getting rid of it altogether just doesn't seem right to me. If you had some type of program coming forward where you had a 5-year, 6-year, maybe a longer time frame, but you need to have an inspection system, something to identify failing septic systems and get them off the system. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Arts?
Good evening, gentlemen. It makes me really sad to see this, our inspection program coming off our comprehensive plan. As some of you may know or may not know, this program was actually proposed by leaders with the Chamber of Commerce. And we never had the enabling ordinance to put it into place, but we were doing what we needed to do. And I think some of you know that Dr. Julie Harrington at FSU has estimated that our county has about 2,000 septic tanks that are just either don't have bottoms on them or leaking and are dumping raw sewage out into the environment, polluting our drinking water, our springs, our bays, our rivers. 2,000. And the only way you can find those is through an inspection program. So it breaks my heart. I think it's really short-sighted that we're getting rid of an inspection program that could have found those 2,000 tanks. Now, at an earlier meeting, I heard Commissioner Kessler propose maybe trying to do a more limited septic inspection program in the Wakulla Springs Protection Zone, for example. And I thought that was a brilliant compromise because...
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, it was... Whoever came up with it, I thought, rather than all or nothing, at least, having that area, we won't find very many of the 2,000, but we'll find some there. And I was worried that this would eliminate that option, but I've been reassured by the planning director that that can still be pursued, so I encourage you to pursue it. In fact, I would encourage you to even look beyond the protection zone, maybe at key coastal areas, so we don't have to close our beaches. Look at some of our rivers, homes close to rivers, whatever. We'll be forced to use the state program, which wasn't as good as the one we had on the books, but there are ways that can be, you can put a limit to how long that's in effect and what tanks need to be inspected so it's not the newest ones that are just put in the ground. So anyway, while I'm very sad to see our existing program become history, I do hope you'll move forward on something, maybe just within the protection zone or a few other critical areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion amongst us?
Yes. I thank the citizens for their comments. Coming back to this, I think, is very important, and addressing those issues within certainly the protection zone. The additional area that Commissioner Arts referred to, I think, is also worthy of the board looking at. I spoke with the county attorney, and this at least does not preclude us from going in and doing something specific for the Springs Protection Area. I'm not sure how it would pertain to the coast. I'm assuming that would still could do it, right? And so I think that that's something that needs to come back, and the sooner the better.
I was going to bring it up under discussion items. It's one of my items to actually talk about a little more.
Okay.
This doesn't involve the performance base, right? This is strictly
Correct.
being exempt from the norm.
You still have to have it inspected, I thought.
Performance space is state regulated.
All for the motion?
Aye.
Unopposed. Now we have the District Director for Congressman Steve Sutherland. Update. Jonathan Hayes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to appear before you. I do bring greetings on behalf of Congressman Sutherland and all of our team in D.C. Just briefly, I know a lot of the, and I don't know if I need to give my address, but okay. The big thing on the in the news and everything right now is obviously the Restore Act, and specifically the implementation of the Restore Act. I'm speaking with some of your staff. I know that there is a concern that that BP is resisting the civil fines that would be levied upon it, and so there is a court date next week. We'll all be watching that. Specifically to that, I would say that there's really nothing that we can do at this point. There's nothing that the Commission in Wakulla County or its citizens can do. There's not really anything that the Congressman or Senator Rubio or Senator Nelson can do. It's in the court system right now. My advice would be to continue to do what you're doing, continue to work within the framework of the act that was signed into law last year by the President, and you guys have definitely done your due diligence and done everything that's been asked of you and required in the act. So just continue to move the ball down the field in that aspect. There was a question in regards to the to the criminal fines that have already been levied in between 4.2 and 4.5 million against BP. There is a chance for your county to get some of that. We'll be happy to get some more information on that to your staff, but that is going to be under the work and supervision of the Department of Environmental Protection, and again, we're more than happy to get you some information on that.
Did you say 4 to 5 million?
No, billion. I'm sorry.
Billion, okay.
4.2 to 4.5. I might have said million. I meant billion.
There you go.
So, a million is not a lot of money with the federal government. So yeah, billion.
A billion.
4.2 to 4.5 billion. The other big thing pressing in the federal government right now is sequestration. There's a lot of unknowns out there right now. I think there is an expectation amongst several folks that have been on the Hill quite a long time, that have been through a lot, that expect sequestration to kick in, and that will result in some pretty significant cuts to our nation's budget in a lot of areas. Congress and the President were able to delay that by a couple of months, so we'll see what happens as we get into the month of March and where that goes. But that is very much an unknown right now, and just a lot of moving parts in regards to preventing those cuts from coming down the pike. So, other than that, if you have any questions or anything, we'll be happy to deal with those. And if you don't know, one of our staffers, Lori Hutto, is our Deputy District Director. She is based full-time in Tallahassee, and Wakulla County falls under her area, so I know she's got a lot of relationships with folks here in the county, and we're only a phone call or email away, and always be more than happy to do anything we can to help our friends and neighbors here in Wakulla County. So,
Thank you, sir.
thank y'all. Yep.
Now, Mark Mitchell is going to give a Restore Act Committee report.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you, Jonathan. We got to work real close with him and stay right on top of this and see what's going to happen in the future. A lot is in limbo. We don't know really which way we're going. I think all of y'all got a report this time.
Yes, sir.
And real quickly, we've had 2 meetings since I last spoke with you. And first one, we had some house cleaning stuff to do, adopt the bylaws, and I was formally elected as chairman once again. And so I'm happy to serve as that, and I think we've got a great committee. I think we're ready to tackle whatever comes down from the feds. The other thing, we worked on a proposed project progress for people to, if they have a project they want to bring to us, an application. And we just started working on that, and as you can see from your report, we've decided to have another meeting strictly for that. So that's probably what our first step's going to be, trying to come up with an application for the citizens to bring to us that we can then rate and then bring to you guys.
These are any private citizen can bring a...
Absolutely.
It's got to be a public project, doesn't it? I mean, can you say I want to replace a roof on my house, for example, or?
David? Nope.
It's got to be a public infrastructure project.
Most like that, no. We'll
I mean, there's broad guidelines in the Restore Act right now about the goals that each project has to meet, including environmental restoration, economic development, promotion of seafood and coastal tourism. So I wouldn't think that putting a roof on a house would qualify, but there's potentially...
Unless it was going to employ about 400 roofers.
That's my point, is that you're going to get, if you say, well, if I put a new roof on my oyster house, I'm going to be able to open it up, and I mean, something like that qualify?
Well, we got to wait for Treasury.
There'll be a lot of applications, is all I'm trying to say.
We got to wait for clarity on that.
Okay.
I think maybe it'd be good if you had sort of a list, or you put out a list of things that could be included. It wouldn't be that everything that could be included, but the general principle.
Economic development's a pretty broad...
Pretty broad, it is.
Yeah. And it's already, that's already outlined. You could certainly include the
criteria is there.
The Restore Act.
Yeah.
You don't see them here.
And it's going to be a lot of work on our behalf to sort through a lot of this stuff and rate it. We don't have the ability to turn anything down. as a committee. Anybody that brings a project to us, we have to rate it and then send it to you guys.
So if you get 100 proposals, you rate 1 through 100.
That's what coming up in this workshop, our rating system. We don't have that yet.
Okay.
And we want to be able to establish that before we put out this project proposals, so people will understand what they do have to do to qualify and where their ranking would be if they come up with such a project.
I'm the board's liaison person on the committee, and what we're working at here today is if we can get the framework set up, then we can put it there. It hopefully will eliminate some of those things that wouldn't be considered like someone's private roof on their house. They would see the guidelines, and they would already know up front, well, my project wouldn't fit the guideline. But as he had talked about, if we were to get 100 projects, then the committee would rate them 1 through 100. And it would come to the board.
Just to be sure I'm clear on this, our infrastructure plan, does it supersede any, let's say their number one project is not what our number one project is. I mean, are we talking about pot 2 and 3 money?
On pot 1 money, the board has the final say-so. Okay. You 5 commissioners have the final say-so.
And
we're an advisory committee.
They're going to bring projects to you, recommend those, rank those projects, and then it's up to you guys to pick and choose which ones you want to go with.
Are they going to assign them to, because I know pot 1, 2, and 3 are totally different criteria, not totally different, but you know what I mean? This guy's project may not fit in pot 1 because it's not a public infrastructure project, but it may fit perfectly in pot 2 and 3.
That's right, and that's what they will determine.
So they will say this is the best fit for this pot or that pot.
We'll go project by project, and we'll categorize them out, because there may be some that may work better for pot 3.
And some will work for pot 2 and 3. It's not saying you get money from one pot, you can't get it from the other.
Right, exactly. And then I'm sure the county could find enough projects to spend every dime of pot 1 on infrastructure easily.
David, are we
$40 million, if it is that, it's not much money at the end of the day for projects. So
have we established any projects that we would be?
Oh yeah.
When can we see that list?
That's that infrastructure.
We've got the infrastructure plan. You've already seen that.
Fancy 11 by 17.
Yep.
Color.
We'll get that. I'll get that to you though. I'll send it to you.
And
we've actually, we've actually applied quite a few projects to the NERDA application process, and in fact, while we're talking about Restore Act and BP and stuff, is we're actually Wednesday, Cherie has been notified that DEP is going to come down. The NERDA guy with DEP wants to look at Mash's Sands for potential funding. That was one of the projects we turned into NERDA. So she's initiated that, and that's and so hopefully we might get funding prior to the Restore Act ever even being, or the funds being disseminated.
That would be great.
Yeah.
When as you saw in here, we're planning our 5 neighborhood meetings, town hall meetings in the different communities, and that we're going to have another meeting the 27th, which is kind of like a workshop, so we can hopefully have some of this stuff ironed out before we go to the communities. Some of these rating systems and the projects proposals. So that's all I have for you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to the consent items. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as modified.
I second the motion.
Motion is second, all 4? Aye. Item 6 was pulled. Howard, do you want to handle that or hand it to David?
Yeah, before I do, I just wanted to say something. I was actually going to pull War off to just commend Kimberly Moore for all the good work that she has done over the years for our county. So I just wanted to make sure I made that point.
Thank you for that. You want David to explain the...
You want me to start that, Mr. Kessler? Okay. This agenda item requests board approval of the proposed record management policy number 1302. The objective of the records management policy provides efficient, effective, and economical management of public records and information. Proper record management ensures that information is available when and where it is needed in an organized and effective manner. The goal of this policy is a record management policy that allows the organization and control over information flow and administrative operation. Therefore, staff is recommending the board's approval of the proposed records management policy to provide the following: space saving. This is the most immediate realized benefit of a records management policy. Currently, we have records scattered in about every building in this county. Reduced expenditures for filing equipment. Appropriate disposition of records can greatly reduce the need for filing cabinets. We've got to come up with this system will help us do that. Increased efficiency and retrieval of information. Basically, we'll store it in one spot, categorize it so that we can catalog it so that we can get to it. And all this is as per state guidelines as well. And also, we'll be in compliance with legal retention schedules. The hallmark of a good records management policy is to establish retention requirements based on analysis of records, based on legal, physical, administrative, and historical requirements and values. In absence of such policy, many organizations either destroy records that should be retained or retain everything, thereby taking a legal risk or assuming unnecessary operating costs. So the budgetary impact of this is $5,000 for shelving. We'll be doing this at the extension facility. Be our main person, and our main person will be our records management. I can't remember that acronym. Anyway, liaison officer. RMLO will be Katie Taff, and then we'll have in each department they will have RMLO that will report to Katie, so that the process will be it'll come from them, it'll come to Katie. Katie will approve of getting it done, getting it up there. Then any type of records that it's time for them to time out and be destroyed, those records will come to Katie. Katie will send that to the state. The state will approve that, and then we'll go through that process.
Okay, we got a motion on that?
Anyway, that's it.
I make a motion that we approve the proposed records management policy number 13-02.
Second.
Your discussion, Howard?
Okay. There we go. So, in meeting with staff, I expressed my concerns in several areas. One is, I think it's very good that we are getting in place a policy. Because we needed to have the policy, and the policy is coming forward. But my two areas which are of concern to me is, one is I have no problem getting rid of paper records when we have electronic files of the same nature. So all of that stuff, as far as I'm concerned, can go as long as we have it electronically in a manner that it's not apt to just disappear on us. The other issue is, if you read through some of the areas that the state says records may be held or could be held longer, is when they have historical value or they're old. If we keep on throwing away our records, we're not going to get old stuff anymore. And so that's one of my concerns also.
So it's particularly old. I assume they mean like the stuff Brent has hanging up in the courthouse that are from the 40s
right.
and 50s.
But 50 years from now, it's going to be particularly old when we were here. They're going to say, what were those dinosaurs doing at that time?
But this piece of paper that I scribbled on 50 years from now is just as worthless then as it is now.
Well,
I get your point, though.
That's your work paper. And as I said, any electronic documents that are the same thing as we have in paper, we don't need the paper anymore. We can store so much on electronic. It almost gets to the point is we can really store almost everything. And I think that's where we need to get to. So we're not throwing away. I'm working on something right now in the 1980s, which is not particularly that old, we don't think, but it's hard to get all of that record there. Okay, so my concern is that I think it's good that we have a policy. Just want to bring out that point to the board, that is that we want to make sure we preserve as much as we can at the same time.
I guess kind of along the lines of what you're saying is that electronic format changes over the years. It used to be a 1.44 or 5.25 floppy, then it was, you know what I'm saying?
Well, one of the things...
Are we going to keep in electronic form up to the modern?
Well, one of the things we're going to be bringing up to the board, and hopefully this year's budget, if we can work it in, if not next year's budget, is there's currently software out there that will allow us to scan all these documents in, take it in electronic format, and then we'll purchase space in the cloud, and then it'll be automatically backed up. That's ultimately where we want to get to, because then what can happen is if the public wants to go and get it, there's a process to go through where they put their credit card in and then go pull whatever they want to pull.
Give us an example, David, of what kind of records we're talking about.
Like all the planning and zoning maps, all of the building officials, our BoCC information that we've got that's public record.
Like the file for the Mashes Sands Pier, for example.
Yes, sir.
The grant file for
That's right. Anything that we have as a file of public record. Now, there's some things that are duplicative that need to time out, like some of our administrative stuff has a 3-year timeout on it. Those things, there's certain things that need to be going ahead and gotten rid of. We don't need to hold those forever and ever. But there's things like all the planning and zoning, the building, there's certain things in the state criteria, the majority of the items you have to keep forever. There's some of the stuff that have 5-year time limits, some of the stuff has 3-year time limits, and that's what we're proposing. We'll go to the state limit. Now, we can change those limits, but we're at least got to do what the state says at the minimum that we have to do.
And Chairman, that's the word, the minimum.
Right.
The state is giving us a minimum guideline.
That's right.
And I don't know what the minimum guideline for minutes of our meetings are, but if it is 3 years, that's not a whole bunch of time. And I
don't know what that is. I can't remember.
And I personally think that things like that, we should just permanently have them.
Right. I certainly could agree with that.
That's it. Just want to make that point.
Thank you. All right. All for the motion?
Aye.
Next item passes. Evelyn, did you get that? All right. Howard, the next one, do you want to explain that one?
Item number 7.
Sure.
This agenda item requests board ratification accepting the Small Cities Community Development Block Grant CDBG award for the FY 2012-2013 grant cycle and approval of the resolution and budget amendment accepting the grant funds.
Is there a motion on this item?
Make a motion that we ratify the acceptance of the Small Cities Community Development Block Grant Award for FY 2012-2013 and approve the resolution and budget amendment accepting the grant funds.
Second.
Howard, you want to talk about it?
And just, again, this is just for a point for the board to possibly consider in the future. And a grant like this, as I understand, it's at $750,000, and we have a match that's coming from another source of money that was given to us. We are going to be paying $115,000 or thereabouts to a contractor. I think that it's worthwhile for the board to at least entertain the item as far as, not for this one, but for the future, of looking of the possibilities of reestablishing control of this program under our own roof.
You want to bring that back under discussion items? Let's talk about it a little bit more.
That's fine.
I'd be interested to talk about that.
That's fine.
All right, any more discussion? All for the motion?
Aye.
Motion passes. I wanted to pull item 9 to, this is the fair market rents, approving the fair market rents. I know we at one time, David, talked about setting our authorizing instead of 100% of the fair market. Basically, the state administers a program. Is it federal government that subsidizes people's rent? We can do it at anywhere from 90 to 100% of the fair market value. Right now, we're doing it at 100%. I know we discussed a year or two ago about changing that to 90% so we could help more people with the same amount of money. Can we now change that to 90%? What's before us now is 100%.
And that's exactly my point, I don't totally fully grasp the advantages or disadvantages of keeping it at 100% versus we have the latitude to go from 90% to 110%. Somewhere in there, we have to make a decision. But I am not comfortable that I understand what that decision...
Here's my understanding. I'll
Okay.
just explain my understanding.
Okay.
Let's say that...
Do we have that consultant here? That,
But I was going to say, the man with all the answers is right there.
All right, I'll let you explain.
Not a problem. Greetings, Commissioners. Ezra McDaniels with Meridian. The 90%, the federal regulations require that each year you adopt fair market rent as your payment standards, or you adopt payment standards. And the statute dictates that you either adopt 90% of the fair market rents, 100% of the fair market rents, or 110% of the fair market rents, and that's at the board's discretion to do. Right now, what we're recommending is 100% of the fair market rents. Now, the discussion did come up last year, absent a rent study, that we would go with 100%. We did do the rent study, and now Meridian, we are using a tool that determines rent reasonableness prior to conducting any transactions as it relates to the Section 8 program. So yes, the board is at liberty to adopt the 90%. In my professional opinion, those amounts are almost irrelevant because the analysis in this area, the rents are nowhere near the fair market rents, and they're going to be dictated by the rent reasonableness.
They're higher than
the fair market rents are, yes, they are higher than the rents are going for in this area.
Do you have people that apply for rent subsidies that are not able to get them because there is no money left?
Yes, right now the waiting list is open. And to date, it closes in 2 or 3 days. And to date, we have 626 applications that came in requesting assistance under the Section 8 program.
My point is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we change it to 90%, that will allow that will free up some money to at least allow some of those people on the waiting list to get this free rent subsidy, and the money will come from not giving the other people as much money.
I
Is
agree.
that correct?
I agree with you, Randy.
Is that correct?
That is not correct. And I will tell you, because it's dictated by each individual family's income.
Okay.
And so once we consider everyone's situation and the 30% requirement of HUD, it's basically irrelevant at that point, because either you're going to get whatever the rent is going for requested by the landlord based on your individual family situation, or you're going to get an amount that's lower than that. So the 90% fair market rents, 100% fair market rents, you can set those at either. You'll probably never reach them, but it doesn't determine that the level of funding that each family will receive, because it's going to be based on varying income levels anyway.
So you're saying it wouldn't hurt? Sorry, Jerry. It wouldn't necessarily hurt anyone to set it at 90?
No, it would not.
Then I'd say we set it at 90.
I second that.
Even if it
I make
doesn't
a
do
motion.
anything, I think
I make a motion that we set it at 90%.
Second the motion.
And our rents are low enough that we're going to typically be below the 90% threshold anyway?
The average rent for a 3-bedroom in this area, based on your universe of Section 8 applicants, is about $636. That's our average HAP payment. Now, keep in mind, Commissioners, that you can't equate the fair market rents to rents, because there's another factor that plays into the equation. Utilities are considered into this equation as well. And so HUD refers to it as a utility allowance. And so when you're calculating these rents, you can set the fair market rents, but it's rent plus the utilities. That equates to the actual housing assistance payment.
Who makes the decision on fair market?
That's HUD. We have to use the federal.
They establish the 625 or whatever?
Absolutely. They set the fair market rents. Now, the board adopts payment standards, and you can adopt those fair market rents as your payment standards.
So HUD basically sent somebody out here and they ran our numbers and they found out the average was 6 whatever?
Absolutely. Based on their complex methodology for doing so, they set the fair market rents each year.
Well, I'd rather always pay 90% than 100%, because somebody's going to benefit from that extra 10%.
And just to be clear, this program subsidizes or wholly pays the rent of low-income families in Wakulla County, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I have some more questions.
Yes, sir.
So when you say the 30% requirement, what do you mean?
That means the baseline for the program, each family has to at least, at a minimum, pay 30% of their monthly income for housing.
So no family is getting free rent?
Currently, when you say free rent, it's all based on a formula. If you don't have 30%, you don't have 30%.
Well, okay, let me give you an example. Let's say there's something for rent, and the rent is $600 a month for whatever. Okay, is that 30% that the applicant has to come up with?
Not 30% of the rent, it's 30% of the income. So of a family's income. If a family has zero income, there's no rent payment for them. If a family has $20,000 income, you divide that by 12, 30% of that monthly income, they would have to pay that at least to that amount. Okay. At least that amount for housing.
Maybe I should have said either free or heavily subsidized.
Okay. And then you went through the trouble of running a program to determine what would be the best percentage for our county to adopt. I think that's what you said. And so my question to you is, obviously there's something more than I'm grasping right now, is this 90%, 100%, 110%. What are you looking at when you make your recommendation? Why did you recommend 100%?
As it relates to the fair market rents?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the, HUD conducts these analyses each year. The requirement that HUD has is to determine whether the rents are reasonable. And last year, maybe about 6 to 8 months ago, the board said that we needed to undertake a rent study just to see what the rents are going for in this area. Keep in mind that sort of the universe of unassisted units in Wakulla County, there are only 70 units. There are not a lot of rental units in this area. And so the universe is very small. So what's going to happen right now, I only have a listing of about 13 properties for rent in Wakulla County. It could be more.
That's just HUD approved, not total units for rent, right?
Well, from the units that we know about. The universe could be larger, but it's not going to be substantially larger than that.
But I think Commissioner Merritt's question I need answered.
Sure.
Is this HUD-approved housing?
There's no, properties are not HUD approved. You can use any landlord as long as they accept a voucher from a qualified individual. So there's no such thing as HUD housing. HUD has what they call public housing, which Wakulla County doesn't have.
Does HUD, or this program, look at any distinction between stick-built homes and mobile homes, or conditions of a mobile home or a stick-built home?
HUD, they have what they call housing quality standards. Prior to moving any person into a unit, it has to pass HQS. That's the baseline standard for an eligible applicant to live in any property. Once it passes that inspection, they can move into that property, whether it's a mobile home, a manufactured home, or a stick-built property.
Nobody's pre-qualified for that, though, correct? I mean, there aren't a list of pre-qualified, when I say HUD rentals, I guess that's what I would mean.
No, sir.
All right, thank you.
If in an event a person had received $600 from HUD, but they lacked $1,000 house, can they move up? Can they pay the difference between the 6 and 1,000?
They would initially coming onto the program, no, sir. HUD won't allow, when you initially qualify an applicant for a program, you have to meet the 40% threshold. Once they're on the program, yes, they can pay the difference. But when you initially get qualified, the answer is no.
Well, it would seem like if they're paying the difference, then they fall into a different category in the first place.
Say that again? I'm sorry.
It would seem like if they're paying a difference between 600 and 1,000, they should be reevaluated in the first place.
Well, it doesn't. They go through annual recertification. So each year, every applicant goes through the same process each year. So we will catch that. If it's a property that they cannot afford, we have to negotiate a lower rent with the landlord. So we're not going to put applicants in a situation to where they can't afford. Now, at the point where that rent exceeds 40% of their monthly income, they cannot afford their property, and we won't allow them to stay there. So that's the baseline for the program.
So there are safe checks and safeguards in place to...
Absolutely.
So, and to clarify once again, after having gone through the work of making the recommendation of 100% recommendation on the, you said that, as I understood it, that it wouldn't make any difference if we set it at 90%.
It wouldn't make, right now, based on your average for a 3-bedroom, it wouldn't make a difference. No, sir.
So there's absolutely no consequence.
Unless you find a huge family. There are some large families here. You know, it's 6, 7 person households. They would possibly qualify for a 4-bedroom. The fair market rent for a 4-bedroom at 100% is $1,367 in this county. Are we going to find that in Wakulla County? Possibly not. So limited options here. That's why actually Wakulla County, Leon County, and Jefferson County, they have an open jurisdiction. So what we're requiring as a safeguard in Wakulla County's program is that when they initially qualify, they have to live in Wakulla County. Now, after that 1 year is up, they can move to another jurisdiction.
Or that family you mentioned you could do like I did and share a bedroom between 2 kids too, right? That's always an option.
That's always option. That's always an option. However, there are some HUD guidelines, you know, governing the different sexes and the number of children in the household.
Thank you.
More discussion? All for the motion?
Aye.
Unopposed.
Is it the 90%?
90%.
90%.
That was in the motion.
Okay. Thank you.
I think don't you say the only motion that was made was the 90%, right? There was not a motion made for... Okay, well, I make a motion that we approve to adopt the proposed resolution approving the 2013 fair market rents as published by HUD as payment standards for the Housing Choice Voucher Program, Section 8.
But adopted at 90%.
But adopting at 90%.
Okay, all for the motion? Aye. Opposed.
Thank you, Ezra.
All right, Louis, very briefly, the item 10, planning and zoning.
Yes, this item is to approve a request to close, abandon the northern portion of Beatrice Drive and Ocklawackney Shores Section A and B subdivision. The board heard this item on January 7th and voted to approve moving forward with the public hearing and advertising this. This item did go before the county's technical review committee on December 20th, and the TRC voted to recommend in favor of this, given that there was only one landowner. And again, our recommendation on this item is for approval of the abandonment.
I mean, I talked to Ms. McMillan on this, and I certainly would support it if there's a motion to move forward.
Make a motion to approve the closing and abandonment of the north portion of Beatrice Drive and Ocklawackney Shores Section A and B subdivision.
I second the motion.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any board discussion?
I heard during a staff meeting that there was consideration of a small portion of property for the bike trail. Was that worked out with the...
That we could not work that out with the landowner.
Howard, I had actually thought about possibly using it for future lift station, but the attorney quickly shut that down, saying we couldn't do that. So I don't agree with the next one, but I do agree with this one. So
yeah, I'm saying the same thing. I don't agree with the next one, but this one I've also talked to the property owner. The property owner is not in agreement with as far as setting aside for the bike trail. So I'm in favor of us just going in and approving the closing.
You have speakers if you really want to talk. Bean and
Stone.
Okay. The motion is, no, if you haven't filled out a card, sir, I'm sorry. We got a motion and a second. All for the motion?
Aye.
That's an aye.
Okay, next item, South Beatrice Drive road closing.
Yes, and this one is to request board direction regarding whether or not to advertise the abandonment of the south portion. Staff is recommending against this abandonment because it does provide access to Ocklawackee Bay. This does contradict a policy in our comprehensive plan that requires us to maintain access to public access to the bay, so staff is recommending against moving forward with this abandonment.
Is there a motion on this item?
Make a motion that we do not approve the application to close or abandon the southern portion of Beatrice Drive and Ocklawackee Shores sections A and B subdivision.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Mr. Sir, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my name is Forrest Coxon. I'd like to give you just a little bit of background about my thinking. In the Second World War, I was a Navy pilot. After that, I went to college. I graduated in architectural engineering. After several years in working in city planning as a planning director of the Planning Commission, I opened my office in Tallahassee as an architect. I did schools, junior colleges, health centers, and hospitals, and I even did some churches here in Wakulla County. I have a real sincere interest in this part of Wakulla County. The old right-of-way closing, it was platted in 1950. It was never used except once that I know of, 15 years ago. Some German tourists parked in my driveway. They went down to the beach. They had a nude bathing contest. I went down and talked to them about the alligators and the rattlesnakes, and they decided they'd go down and use our public bathing facilities at the end of the road. The other incident was about 6 months ago. Gene McMillan ordered the county workers to go down and cut the bushes on this not used right-of-way. Now, there exists on our part of Massive Sands, we have 2 public boat ramps. We have a large park, we have a public dock, and we have access to the beach to service this area. Beatrice Drive right-of-way is not needed now, and it's not needed in the future. At least in the last 60 years it hadn't been used. I understand that there's a recommendation coming from the Plan Commission or the Executive Director, but we weren't informed about any meeting or visitation or anything else about this. They just went down there and I guess they went down there and came back and said there was no reason to grant this, even though it hadn't been used in 60 years. I also understand that when there's an objection to any proposal, that the Commission pretty well decides not to go ahead with it. Now, I just found out about some of this morning, and so I've been trying to research but I wondered, did the planning director or group or whoever visited, did they consider the location of the people or person or person that are objecting to this right by my house? I've learned the name of a lady who signed one of the letters, and I won't mention her name, but I went by to try to see her. The gate was locked, and she had no phone, so I have no way to contact even that one person. If there was anybody else that objected to it, I haven't yet to find out about it. This road right-of-way is not needed. It hasn't been needed for the last 60 years, and I request that you go ahead and close like you did Mrs. McMillan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
I have a question for you.
So, go ahead. Sir?
Sir, if you don't mind.
I would like to ask you a question.
So are you saying that this road was not cleared until very recently, and who cleared it?
It was cleared by the county at the request of Mrs. McMillan.
Okay.
Well, because I went down there and I talked to the guys and they said, why are you doing this after all this time? They said, well, Mr. McMillan, I talked to your road maintenance people, and they have been told to go down there and do some clearing.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Sure.
Thank
Yes.
you for your...
Thank you.
I appreciate your...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Chuck S., 112 Lake Ellen Circle. As we continue to develop the county, as properties become more and more of a premium, there will be more and more restrictions on our access to our waters of Wakulla County. So even keeping keeping every access point to the Gulf is important. And so I would hope you would not move forward with this proposal.
Any more discussion? All for the item? Aye. Any opposed? Item passes. David? All right. Chief Morgan's going to do this, or you about the facility?
Yes, he's gonna, hold on, let me get there. Go ahead, Chief.
Go ahead. Commissioners, we come in before you this evening to not approve the facility, but to discuss the process to continue with something that has been included in the infrastructure program that was approved by the commission earlier, and the concept of it. We're not asking you, we don't have anything to say that this is exactly what we're going to build or exactly how it's going to be bid and such as that. So we just wanted to bring you up to date of where we are and the reasoning behind ours. This picture is a picture of a fire station that similar to what we want in the city of Midway. It's in the price range that we had in the budget that they built about 3 years ago. One of the things while we were researching this program, that our biggest void in fire protection as far as the outside the 5 mile program that the insurance services offices has for a discount to a homeowner or any kind of property owner for the insurance rates that they would enjoy. In other words, if you lived in the middle of Crawfordville, you wouldn't have the same rate as if you lived out in the middle of a national forest or in Wakulla Gardens, because Wakulla Gardens is outside the 5 mile radius for Crawfordville Fire Station and the Wakulla Station Fire Station. Moving it to the location of near Trice Lane and Shadeville Highway on property that is already owned by Wakulla County would bring in the majority of the homes. We haven't run each one, but the line on the program is not very visible on the map, but it's right at the 5 mile. And I'm estimating at least 70% of the homes in Wakulla Garden would fall in that 5 range. I had a phone call since about 2 months ago from an individual that owned 15 rental properties in that subdivision, and he was very interested in getting a break. And all I could tell him when we did the measurements that 3 out of the 15 homes were within the 5 miles, but now with this, almost all of his homes would be in that range. Does that mean I quit talking now? Just to give you some background of where we are on our facilities, Crawfordville Volunteer Fire Station, and you have the history of it that was submitted by Chief Harvey, that gave me a copy of what he had done a couple years ago. This facility was built by volunteer donations and fundraising programs in the 70s. It has been added on to a couple times. The building that you see on the far right, it was actually a pole barn that was in for outside storage, and they converted it into what is now housing a brush truck and some other equipment areas. The inside of the fire station has been less than livable for a number of years. We've had a roof leak in the station for a number of years. The career firefighters that were assigned to that station, the one career fire station that we have manned, moved out of it due to some issues of health concerns. We had some options of repairing that. I can get into my knowledge of what that is for you in just a few minutes, but these are just some of the conditions that are there now. The county staff is recommending that become a facilities maintenance building, which would still need a roof on it, but it would need the major interior improvements to be for facilities maintenance once that is moved into that area.
The Trice Lane Station was built as a spec house in the late 80s, and Wakulla County bought it somewhere in 1990, 1991. It's a 900 square foot single-family residence with 2 bedrooms that was converted into an EMS station. The use was converted, but there was no conversions done to the building. Afterwards, and within a couple of years, a garage was built on the side of that to house the ambulances. In the early 90s, they could park an ambulance in there, but with the ambulance, and we buy the smallest ambulance that we can that meets the specifications from the federal and the state governments, and they will not fit into that garage at this time. So besides the security issues of them, we do have a good part of them out in the weather. So looking at the areas that are upgraded, there was vinyl flooring in the house when they bought it. That vinyl flooring still exists. One thing that I want to mention to you, this one and the next one we're going to talk about, these stations are manned 24 hours a day. Doesn't mean they're in the station 24 hours, but that's where they're assigned for 24 hours a day. And the employees that live in those conditions are there for 1/3 of their lives. This is the classroom building that was built or brought into, I think it was a modular structure, brought into the training center located on Oak Street next to the sheriff's office. And when the career crew moved out of Station 8, they converted that themselves into living quarters in the classroom. We will eventually, as we're striving to get certified as a Firefighter 2 training center, we will have to have a classroom, either an additional building or this one turned back into a classroom sometime in the future. So that would give us, the conditions inside this building are not conducive to living, and I'm not talking about a Radisson Inn, I'm not talking about a Marriott, I'm talking about a motel less than we're used to that you and I would stay in some of the conditions. Recently we spent a little bit of money at the lumber company, and they divided their bedrooms so they have a little bit of privacy amongst them while they're working in Wakulla County.
Basically, our fire department full-time is run out of a metal pole barn and a trailer.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Is what it boils down to.
Right.
Yes, sir.
It's wonderful.
We have piecemeal facilities everywhere.
And as the agenda item shows you, and I believe that's the last slide, yes, the agenda item shows you that we have 4 facilities. The one I don't have pictured is the Trice Lane Public Works building, where we are housed downstairs. It has a major water problem, but rather than fixing that into what our quarters are, our offices are in administration, Public Works is in need of a first floor to meet with ADA requirements. We would combine 4 buildings, 4 locations into one building. Yes, it is expensive. We estimated the infrastructure plan called for $2 million. We budgeted $1.5 million. It would be paid back over a 10-year program for 2/3 of it out of the MSBU, 1/3 of it out of the general fund for the EMS budget. And we're looking at a practical facility. The volunteers would have a place to come and meet, a place to train, a place to stay when they wanted to and do their business as volunteers. Administration would have offices, and the fire and EMS crews for Crawfordville would be housed in the same building along with their supervisor. So it would be basically housing 5 personnel 24 hours a day. And as you see in the agenda item, currently we're paying approximately $1,546 a month for utilities for the 4 facilities. Obviously the savings we had will not pay for the building. I'm not saying that, but it would reduce that somewhat, and it would give us a facility that we could be housed in for decades if it's built correctly.
I want to ask you a question too,
Yes,
Chief.
sir.
I wasn't aware until the briefing that we had so many of our fire equipment vehicles that were not able to fit inside the base. And I was wondering, did you have an estimate of how many of our vehicles it is that are sitting out in the weather because they're not able to fit up underneath the shelter?
There's 3 ambulances that are currently not housed properly or secure, and without being dramatic, but we do keep controlled substances on those. We have locking mechanisms for that, but that's one more lock that we cannot put on that because they can't fit in. The career fire station is housed in a building that the building department reminds me regularly was built as a very temporary structure almost 3 years ago now.
I'm gonna stay by my position earlier, is that we've got a community center that we're not using, and we're trying to figure out how to use it. And I'm gonna stand on that, is that we need to move fire and EMS and our board offices over to the community center. We've got a great building over there, and we got lots of land. You know, let's don't build new stuff when we've got stuff there setting. We can make that building work for you.
And Commissioner, I'm not, understand that I am proposing that we have a facility. How it is and where it is, that's up to you guys. I'm recommending that location simply because it'll handle, it will help Wakulla Gardens. As far as, this particular drawing that I sent you, I'm very open for what can be.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to move that we not move forward with the plan as presented, but as an alternate location, we utilize one of the buildings at the existing community center, and we move forward as close as we can to the plan you've submitted, utilizing that building. Look at using existing $500,000 that we've got allocated in 1 cent sales tax money and use that for renovation money.
I second the motion.
All right, let's talk about this for a second. It seems like there aren't going to be any repercussions about this, but there is, because I've been telling the community for many, many years they're going to have a community center. You know what happened.
Not me.
I know you haven't, but then we need to think about it.
I've got a recommendation for that too.
Those folks aren't here tonight to say,
Well, they'll have to come back to us. But I, not part of the motion, but just discussion, I recommend that we reconsider Commissioner Moore's offer that he brought a few months ago to utilize the $396,000 grant, and let's use that at our extension center. We're dangerously close of losing that money.
that's going to be my next point.
We're going to have egg on our face if we don't have some kind of plan to utilize that money. If we do this, then everyone will get a piece of the pie. We can develop that facility with the $396,000. We can have a nice fire EMS combined facility. We'll save $1 million right out the bat, and we don't have to go into debt to do it.
Now, remember also, a big component of his was a garage. The community center is not going to work for a garage. You can't park a ladder truck in there. So there's going to have to be a facility built.
What's the length of a ladder truck?
50 feet. So
I was going to say 50, but the proposal we had on there can house 8 vehicles, 4 bays, 2 back-to-back.
if you're talking about using the community center for office space, fine. But you can't convert it to house ambulances.
I think we can to some degree. We might not put all the apparatus in we want, but I believe that community center building is 50 feet wide. So maybe with the exception of the ladder truck, we'd be able to put the other we could easily put 2 fire trucks and 2 ambulances in there.
We're going to gut a finished interior.
I don't think you'd want to do that.
If it saves $1 million and keeps us from going into debt.
If you did that, you would build the bays attached to that building, because you've got to have administrative area and you got to have living quarters to make this work, and that facility will do that, but it won't. You can't house in there. But we could add on to it, and you're not talking about that much to do that. You're right. You're not talking about $1 million to add on bays, but now one of the items I'm going to do is we got, as I mentioned to you guys in the meetings, we're going to have the next meeting. I finally got the information from the YMCA on a final agreement for the community center, and we're going to be bringing that up at the next board meeting to bring that forward to you guys.
We have got to make a decision.
Absolutely.
Period. Amen.
I'm good with this decision. If we can get 2 other people, I say let's do it.
We need to decide, are we going to have a community center or not? There's been some ideas thought about moving the library there. I thought about putting the fire at one time at the Trice Lane and blah, 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 but last thing we want to do is lose a $300,000 grant because we couldn't make our minds up.
I agree.
I definitely agree. We don't need to lose that money.
Even if we don't all agree on it, I may not agree with what your plan forward. This board needs to make a decision on how to move forward. And I would, if you want to move forward this way, that's fine, but somebody come back next meeting with a resolution to the community center.
I think, is there any way
We've got to have a resolution. If we're not going to have one, then fine. Let's just put it out there. We're not going to have a community center.
Mr. Chairman, just as a point, I'm not sure whether you're still talking about having part of the community center located on the same property. Us use one building and the other be used for community center.
I don't think that's necessary.
Okay.
I think what Ralph was suggested, not as part of the motion, but we look at using the Ag Center again.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well,
Now-
yeah, Chief.
My concern would be that co-located with emergency vehicles in a community center.
I think the biggest thing being said is there are other options other than what's been presented tonight. I agree with Commissioner Thomas, but at the same time, I know that I think Mr. Edwards is going to be meeting real soon, and hopefully by the next meeting, you would be able to know something about the other, wouldn't you?
Well, I realize I'm going off a board direction, and currently we're proceeding with the community center plan as it is. And I met with the YMCA. I've got their proposal. I have not reviewed that. I didn't get it till yesterday, so I have not reviewed that, and I'll be bringing that to the board for moving forward with the community center as it stands.
Let me not stray too far off, but the point we're at now, if I understand, we had, what, $300-something, David?
$396.
We had a plan we wanted to do to the existing two buildings. We bid it out. We didn't come anywhere close to being able to afford it.
It was way over
Things
there.
kind of on hold.
Right.
Basically, till we could use that money to build a standalone facility somewhere else.
I don't think we need to lose that money. We need to find...
We can move that money over to the Ag Center, and we can spend all that money on the Ag Center and be done with that grant that we have a chance to lose it.
Yeah, that's a possibility, but the biggest thing I just need I need you guys to make a decision.
We'll give you direction next meeting.
Let's have a motion and a vote. Ralph, if you will, make it your agenda item, and
I will.
Let's make a decision.
Absolutely.
As long as it's 3-2, the decision's made.
I think
then you'll know which way to go.
The important thing for the community is we're going to fumble this money and not have any money going forward with this community center. Or we can take a small bite of this apple, and we can do that. If you look at the terms of the grant said that we need to have a location for cultural events, for plays, for music, art, things like that. We could use the west building at the community center as it is now. Leave the stage,
I agree.
Leave the seats out there, so we've met that requirement. Another part of the grant is we need to have after-school education and enrichment, and it included specifically having a new kitchen in there for 4-H services. So it's a natural location to have that there, and so for the major cultural events, we keep the west building in place.
I thought there was some concern by the chief about having cultural events at a place where the ambulances are.
Well, I think that would be different than a community center with children running and playing outside. We're talking about if someone wants to have a play or a recital or something like that.
Why don't you guys let us come back with a couple of proposals, because we need to make sure we look in now that we've the last time that this was raised, we had time to look at. We just can't just say, okay, we're going to hop and give we're going to move this building over to the extension center. We got to check with HUD and make sure, do we have to go through another environmental study?
You do have to do an environmental.
So, yeah, that's what I mean, and that stuff takes time, so we need to look at that time frame. Mm-hmm. We can give you some ideas of what the cost will be to add the bays onto the existing facilities, and then what the cost would be to condition the west room to use it for a function. We can give you that, or we can give you, and also at the same time, I'll give you the proposal from the YMCA and what that's going to cost us to move forward, and then you guys can make a decision next in 2 weeks. So this needs to be tabled so we can intelligently discuss it.
Even without a vote, we know there's 3 votes to not do that and move it to the community center. So if you don't mind, would you change it to table it, and let's have him bring back, because I know I need a separate garage, even if we use the community center. There is a cost involved. It's not like we can do your plan and it won't cost anything. It'll cost less, of course, and I may probably go along with it. Mm-hmm. Would you mind changing it to table it, and let's have him bring it back?
I want to add a little more about it.
Table it. I think that we can vote to not go forward with this, and then we bring the next plan back for the fire and for community center. Bring them both back at the same meeting, I believe.
So your motion was simply not to go forward, not to say move it to the...
Not to go forward with it as it's been presented tonight.
Yes.
But we're still open to other options. Right. We're
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Actually, I think the motion, if you want to maybe amend your motion, because the motion I wrote down was not to approve, but to utilize one of the buildings at the existing community center with $500,000 of 1 cent sales tax to renovate for fire. So,
Okay, let's modify, and we just not move forward with this plan, and we come back at the next meeting with information that will incorporate the bays and as much as we can get in there. If we can get a training room, if we can get bunk rooms into that new facility.
Okay. Second, you'll make second? Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, I haven't even started.
Go ahead.
Because I had just a couple more I wanted to say as well.
So, as I understand it, this item calls for, as it stands right now, for us to borrow $1 million, even though it doesn't say it in that item.
Commissioner, as I said, I think the option was for us to come back with you with a conceptual drawing.
Yes,
You know, from what I-
yes, the million, it would be
And it was
roughly $1 million out of the MSBU, right?
2/3 from MSBU, 1/3 from the general fund.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking is, are we going to have to borrow with this plan? Forget about the concept, what the building looks like. With this plan, would we have to borrow $1 million?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's the answer, okay? And I think that's a starting point of what we have to look at. I may not be in agreement of all this shifting around, and I get very nervous about doing things quickly that are supposed to be long-term, thought-out processes. But I certainly, my position is, I don't want to now, at this point in our economy, in this county, take on another $1 million debt. Okay.
I agree.
And go ahead.
So, speaking solely for this plan, the way it stands right now, with the having to borrow that money, I'm against it.
I think you'll find that, just knowing government, $1 million turns into $2 million, then it turns into $3 million. There had never been a proposal made by government that stayed within budget that I know of.
Now, on the same note, if I could,
Go ahead.
next, we don't need to stick our heads in the sand either. We're running out of a mobile home trailer and a metal building. It's put on an asphalt slab. That's where we're expecting our full-time firefighting to come from. We need to be realistic at least. I've inspected the Station 8 building. I mean, it was concrete block. They aren't poured solid. The roof has been changed. We need to do something. We maybe not need to do the most expensive thing. I agree with that. But we do need to do something.
Well, I can agree
We
that...
can't continue down the path we're going. We tried to get a plan. We tried to figure out a way to pay for that plan over time. So I agree with trying to save as much money as we can, but we also need to try to stick with some sort of logical path forward also. That's all I'm saying.
I've been against the plan to build a new facility and whatever, and I brought forth 8 months ago, a plan that was not accepted. But we can provide facilities for what we need, and we can do it at 10% on the dollar of building a new facility. I mean, how much difficulty is it to build a cover 60 foot long for a fire station? You know, maybe you have to have it insulated. You got to have a door on both ends of it, but that doesn't require a huge amount of money to build a garage for.
Well, there's a couple things, Commissioners, and if you give us $10,000 to go build a garage, we'll operate the best we can out of it. I'm not saying that you...
I'm not fussing at you.
I understand, but there are requirements for ISO to meet the requirements for shelter from weather as well as just...
It can't be all that great when we're talking about a cover and whatever.
I agree with the concept that if we use an existing building, we could... I have no idea the cost of renovating that, but I feel it would probably be best to build a garage-type building like we're talking about on side of it, not to try to build it inside that garage.
I can build metal buildings, metal shopping centers for $70 a square foot, finished, bathrooms and everything. Now, counties and government can't do that. Maybe it'll cost twice as much. But basically, in a commercial environment, I can build all day long for $70 a square foot.
I agree with that.
So we're looking for the most efficient for the county, and
I
2 decades from
I
now, that the
appreciate that.
commission will not have to be facing the same issue that we're living in, in the
We
others.
also have to plan forward at some point, Howard, I know you're next, at some point, we are going to need a ladder truck probably in
I agree with
Crawfordville,
you.
so it's smart
I agree with
to
you.
build big enough to
Yeah.
accommodate
I
that.
totally agree that you folks need something. What you're living in is trash, but we don't need a Tallahassee Cosmo shop.
I agree wholeheartedly. We can't afford that, and we won't.
And we're not proposing that either.
Howard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, getting back first to the money, the estimate was $2 million, and budgeting $1.5 million and borrowing $1 million. That's the numbers that were put out.
I think it was 1.5 million.
1.5 million.
1.5,
And $1 million was the loan amount.
Yeah, that's what I think.
okay, and I thought that you had used the $2
No, I
million.
said the infrastructure plan called for $2 million, but that wasn't what we were
But he didn't go with that plan.
Oh,
He
okay.
didn't take that recommendation. He
Okay.
went with the 1.5.
I got you. So,
BP to pay for this.
yeah, and as we look at this, I think we have to look at all of the options, and also getting back to priorities of what, and this obviously is one of the priorities, but we have to list all of those priorities. But what, this is, we move the firehouse from one spot to another, we get closer to Wakulla Gardens, we capture 80-70%, we're not quite sure, but a good portion of Wakulla Gardens. What happens to the other portion of Wakulla Gardens that we don't capture? Are we not better looking at the landfill and having a substation there?
I had suggested the landfill, actually at one time, and I was basically told the main demand for firefighting is in Crawfordville.
Right. We ran that.
And ambulances and all that stuff. So you're right, it would pick up more Wakulla Gardens as far as the insurance rating goes, but it would actually pull the ambulances further away from the population.
And it would also you would pick up Wakulla Gardens, and then you'd lose portions of the northern part of the county, or portion of this is covered.
Ideally,
so you
Howard,
move it over there. Ideally, if you had a substation there, you could do
volunteer
that.
station would be
If you
perfect.
but you'd have to be a volunteer, either that or we'd have to staff a whole nother station. So.
Right now, we have paid station and a volunteer station in the same spot.
Here in Crawfordville, right.
Yes.
Right.
So maybe one of those moves, and if it's not your paid, then it's maybe your volunteer. I don't know. But I'm just saying that I'm just getting worried when we say, okay, in 2 weeks we're going to get this thing worked out. When we move this firehouse, wherever we move it, we're maybe taking away from people that did have coverage, and what happens to them as this thing...
Well, if we move it to Trice Lane, that does not happen. If we move it to the landfill, that happens. And then all of a sudden, fire trucks would have to come out of the landfill now and come all the way back into town, versus at Trice Lane, they can pop out and go wherever they want to within the county quickly. And that's one of the things that's one of the matrices
Well,
that we looked at.
if we have a substation with an ambulance, it's an ambulance station with a volunteer truck there, I think we accomplish a lot at that landfill, and we still have Crawfordville covered.
or closer. And one thing that was hard for me to understand is you got Crawfordville volunteer firefighters, and you have what most people assume is the Crawfordville Fire Department, but that, as you know, the full-time firefighters serve the whole county, not just the Crawfordville area. We'll be sure that was.
Even if you did a temporary, we've actually looked at, if you're going to do we still have to do something with our facilities here. We can't keep operating the way we are. It's ridiculous. All right, but if we had a substation, instead of putting it in landfill, you use substations for Wakulla Gardens. Let's put it in that Wakulla Gardens area. That way, you better pull volunteers from the Wakulla Gardens area. And then we've talked about that, and that's one of the things we talked about, is having a volunteer station there, because you already got the one from St. Mark's, and this would put us closer, and then you also got the one from Wakulla Station. So, we could do it at the landfill, but also maybe even look about putting it in closer, so it's more convenient for people that are living in Wakulla Gardens to serve as volunteers there.
Like River Sink is in the neighborhood, just like
right.
Courtney Bay, I think, it's actually...
And that's something that we need to put in our plan, but it still doesn't take away from, we still have to do something with our facility here.
I think whatever we do with the community center, we need to be sure that we leave a place for assembly area, because it's already shown many times where we had overflow BoCC meetings there, we had other events, forums that was held there, and whatever we do with the community center, that west end, we need to leave it where it can be used for assembly if we do. And I fully agree with Russell Board that we do not need to lose that money, but what I hope we don't approach things impulsively to where we look back and make the wrong decision. So whether it's finding a new place for the fire station or the community center, different things, whatever we do, I think we really need to tread lightly and analyze all angles of it to make sure that we make the right decision. And then, which is going to take more time than tonight's meeting.
Well, I think an easy fix, if we're talking about alternate locations, it's easy enough to take a map and draw 5-mile radius circles on that map, and let's see where the holes are, and let's see where we have the most dense populations. I mean, we shouldn't make a decision for any kind of alternate location without doing that, because, I mean, that will reveal itself.
We have that map. Right, and we did that last year, and that's the reason we came up, because we looked at putting it all over, and that's the reason it made most sense to move it to Tri-Lane, and then in the future do a satellite or a volunteer station at Wakulla Gardens. That made the most sense, because we looked at moving the entire facility we're proposing at Tri-Lane over to the landfill area. But then we looked at where all the calls came from and where we went to, and then it was like, we're moving all our emergency vehicles to where the calls came from. So we'd have to come back to where we were to service those calls, and that's insane.
Commercial facility.
So that's right. So it would make better sense if you're going to do anything outside of this area, do it on a volunteer basis.
Yeah, and so if those calls are mainly ambulance...
I don't know if they are or not.
Yeah, well, if
maybe
they are...
wrecks, fire department shows up at every wreck.
The problem is they're combined now. It's hard to pull them off.
Well, the first thing we got to do is, I hate to use, that's grant money that we got sitting out there that we may lose. So we got to spend that. And we can't spend it all over the county in a half a dozen different directions. So we got to make a decision.
Next meeting, we need to make a decision.
Next meeting, we need to make a decision.
I think that the decision next meeting is to figure out where we're going to spend that money, and then we'll go forward with how we're going to do with the fire department.
I agree. I think there's more of a timeline attached to what to do with the 396 than, even though we recognize that there is a need to get these fire trucks out of the weather, that's not a pressing need as much as it is that we're on a timeline. If we don't spend that money, we're going to lose it. And I think that focus number one, we need to focus what are we going to do with that money. Then once we do that, then address the fire. Now, some of these may go together, but...
Sounds like we're in great. Ready to vote?
What are you voting on?
Ralph's motion to not proceed with the plan. All for the motion? Aye.
Aye.
None opposed.
Does that mean I should tell the contractor not to move in the morning?
Probably not. Drop the tool belt.
Thank you, Chief.
David, the email?
Yes, Louis, would you start this item, please?
Yes, Commissioners, this is just to get board direction regarding sending courtesy letters to affected property owners who are affected by the FEMA flood map revisions. We've identified 1,122 owners of properties that will be affected who have habitable structures. We've identified approximately $605 for mailing letters and $483 for mailing postcards. We're recommending that we do letters in order to provide a map and additional information. Again, this is the board requesting that we provide this information, and we're requesting direction.
I make a motion that we approve your suggestion that we make a mailing to the 1,000 plus or minus.
Second, with the letters.
Letters, correct?
Yes.
Any more discussion?
Yes. I just want to make it clear, we did not create this problem, but we are going out and notifying our citizens that are going to be affected by
I
it.
think it's $605 well spent.
Yes.
I would like to also commend the staff for finding the best way to notify the most number of people for the least amount of money to the county.
Good. All right, all for the motion?
Aye.
None opposed. Next item?
Next item, request board approval of the First Amendment to the agreement for wastewater services by and between Wakulla County and Talcon Electric Cooperative. As you know, we came into agreement we reached this agreement with Talcon where they will actually shut down the plant at Shell Point that serves Shell Point and Oyster Bay and tie into our lift station that we installed out on Highway 98. We ran into some issues with DEP, but as of this afternoon at 4:37, we received notification that we got the permit from DEP. So from what this amendment does is from today, Talcon has 180 days to complete that and also pay us $396,000 for the tap fee. So, that's right. And they'll become a bulk customer, so I would like to get this amendment approved.
I make a motion that we approve the First Amendment to the agreement for wastewater services by and between Wakulla County and Talcon Water and Wastewater Incorporated.
Second.
Got a motion, second, any discussion?
Yeah, I just have a question on Talcon will still maintain its customers, only the sewage will be going to our plant, or will we now assume those customers?
They're going to maintain the collection.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're just going to
They're a bulk
big
customer.
meter.
We'll send them one bill for bulk.
Oh, okay.
One big meter.
So this will be a bulk customer.
All for the motion?
Aye.
None opposed.
Next item, request board approval to increase usage rates in the river sink service area. This system in 1998 was constructed via CDBG monies to build an above-ground water tank and 2 wells as a result of well contamination due to Tropical Storm Alberto. Currently, we're proposing to increase the rates in this facility from base rate of $24.13, and then you have the layout rates $3.25 for the first 3,000 gallons and $3.75 between 3,000 and 6,000 gallons. The reason those rates are so high in order for the water system to be self-sustaining is because the service area, the services are very few homes. Unfortunately, there's no service area left to expand the customer base. We're aware of the hardship and the rate increase causes and continues to look for opportunities to reduce expenses in a more efficient manner. But this has 110 residential homes in the River Sink area. We request approval to move forward with this. This fund will, if we don't do something, this fund will be going into the negative, and other rest of the county will be subsidizing this water system. Therefore, this is something, there should have been rate increases all along. It's bad policy not to have rate increases on a regular basis. Something we're going to look at moving forward. That way you don't have to have one-time crunches like this. You got to be able to keep up with existing inflation.
Anyway, this could be phased in, Dave, instead of...
That's a possibility. It could be phased in. It's up to the board as to what you want to do. Currently, the way it works out in a 5-year plan next year, we're going to be depleting down. We have to paint, it's required that we would paint the water tower. That's $40,000. That chews into the fund balance. Next year with this rate increase, we would be bringing back to the fund balance at $3,200, which is not much. But we do have some fund balance to chew in. We can chew into that, but understand, if we have well go out, we don't have any money.
Let me tell you where I'm thinking, guys.
It's up to you guys.
We got 100-something customers. Most of those customers have a well at their house because that's what the grant was for. If I was one of those customers and my water bill doubled, I'd just shut my water off and run my well. We lose 40% of our customers. There goes 40% of our fee base. Now we're going to raise the rate up on them to try to cover it. That may not happen. Just my thinking. And I hate to say that, but if we keep it at a reasonable rate in line with the other ones, then the rest of the county has to subsidize it, and I guess that's the catch-22.
I don't think we can have 2 different rates in the county.
We got 4.
Well,
5.
We don't have control.
We don't have 2 different county rates.
I have a motion. I move to approve the increased usage rates in the River Sink water area, service area per the Florida Rural Water Association recommendation with one modification to leave the base rate unchanged at the $15. That way those that are consuming very little water can still pay the base rate.
All right, can we get a second so we can talk about that?
I'll second it.
All right, so Ralph, what you're proposing is, instead of having the base rate at $16,
24.
25.76, wouldn't it be?
$24.13, you want to leave it at $15,
That's right.
and then keep the per gallon rate after that.
Keep it at the full recommended rate.
That, I assume, is not going to generate enough revenue, I would assume, to cover expenses, correct?
We'd have to run analysis on that, yeah, you're gonna get,
Well, there's 110 customers, whatever, $10.
that's $19,800 a year in base rate.
Well, Ralph's proposal would cut $10.
That still put us at approximately $50,000 in revenue where we're generating 30 now.
$12,000 a year is what it would cut from what they
It's gonna cut us a
proposed.
little shy of 50,
But it's also apples and oranges.
yeah, it's Apple, yeah.
Because your current base rate is $15, and that includes the first 3,000 gallons of usage.
That's
The
true.
Rural Water Association's recommendation is to have a base rate that covers your fixed costs, but it doesn't include any usage. The usage is billed on the usage rates after that. So that would be a little bit difficult.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
now,
could-
now what you could do is you could do it,
Along with that.
you could do your base rate at $15, and then for the first 3,000 gallons, it's $3 and whatever it is, and
Keep the
$3.25, so that your base, your gallon, your first 3,000 is not built into your base rate, and we'd have to run those numbers, and that might work. so.
Absolutely. That's what I'm proposing. If you have a little lady that's living by herself and she's only consuming 1,000 gallons, she'll pay $15 base rate and then $3.25 for the first 1,000 gallons.
I like that idea.
That's what I'm
Get a
proposing.
second on that one?
I agree.
Second?
I already seconded it.
Okay, we got two citizens, Ray, CADE.
Good evening, County Commissioners. As soon as I received this notice from the Water Department, I did a spreadsheet, which, by the way, I sent that to Commissioner Kessler. 2 people live in my household. I got my 3-year history of my usage, consumption. Then I punched in the proposed base rate. My percentage increase every month was over 100%. So I don't know if Mr. Kessler shared that spreadsheet with you. Well, I have it if you'd like to see it. The bottom line is that I did my 3-year history for every month, and each month my new percentage increases exceeds 100%. And in some cases, during 2 months of the year, April, May, or June, when I do extra watering, because if I water my yard using my water provided by the county, get more pressure so I can water my yard quicker. In that case, in some cases, it was 250% increase. That's for 2 people. So for a household with 4 or 5 people, or children, or elderly, Mr. Thomas mentioned a little old lady. Well, how about a single big guy? I mean, actually that's called price discrimination in economics, so it doesn't matter whether it's a little old lady or one single guy. I think it's ridiculous to have a 100% increase, and the information I heard just a few minutes ago about keeping it at a $15 base and then using the steps, I think that would be an excellent idea. But for you to go to that 24, I think it was 24.13, and then the 325, 425, that's a lot of money. 100% increase plus for everyone. And I know it's only 110 households, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Laura Simpson?
I'm basically at the same point that he is. I have 3 people in my household. We use about 96 1,060 or 9,600. So my bill goes from $24 to $75. That's for a household of 3. Think of all the other ones that you have out there that have 3 and 4 children. You're talking about exponentially increasing it. Even for the meter usage, if I only use the first 3,000, it will be $325, but in my case, it would be $525 for that 1,000. So why should I have to pay $525 for my 1,000 versus them only having to pay $325 for their 1,000? Everything is growing increasingly larger in the cost of living. And the citizens of Wakulla County cannot absorb this kind of increase. You may only think it's 110 people, and that sounds like a very small number, but I'm one of those 110 people. And I can't afford $75 a month for my water bill. Now, I can understand raising the base rate if need be. If you're going to increase using these rates, keep it at $325. Why should I be penalized at $525? I'm using the same amount of gallons.
Thank you.
Commissioners, before you move forward, could I just ask that, just for clarification, that if you move forward with this motion, you include approving the resolution as amended, and then we can make if you change the rate structure as proposed, we can make the necessary changes and have the chairman sign it.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, that rate that was just mentioned, is that the rural water associations that she was referring to?
Step rate.
Yeah, that's 525.
Yes. The 9,000 to 12,000 gallons of meter usage is $525 per 1,000 gallons used.
So
I assume that only kicks in after the 9,000
That's right,
gallons.
that's right.
So the average.
The only thing we're adjusting is different is the base rate.
How do we compare to the other water systems? I know that you know, it gets a little confusing. We see what their base rate is in the other water systems, but how does it play out in the other water systems compared to what we have right now? Are we so much under?
In this agenda item, we speak to that. It's in, hold on just a second.
So the amount,
sorry.
the amount of money we're bringing in now, is it covering the operating expenses of the system?
No.
Well, that's not the question I'm asking.
Right, that's not the question, that's his question.
Let me tell you just a second, Howard. Give me just a second. All right. Okay. Compared to 2,000 gallons, which if you look on your agenda item right there.
Okay, wait, so I'm going to go back to it.
Where it says,
Which one is it?
you're right, go down just a little bit, Howard.
Okay. I'll get it. I gotta get this thing over here. Okay.
All right, where it says, the spreadsheet where it says water charge, and it says example of 1 month's water bill with the following usages. Okay? All right, right there at the top of that page. Go back.
Go back, okay.
It's kind of hard because they're split.
Right.
All right.
Talquin is 1941.
Right?
Pause would be $25.
At 2,000 gallons.
That's right, 2,000 gallons.
1,000.
City of Sop Choppy's at 18. Currently, we're at 15. We would be at 15 under the proposed rate. Under the proposed, but that existing.
Existing, right.
But that would be under what Commissioner Thomas is. That would be 2150.
Exactly.
And St. Mark's would be 2117.
So 2150 compared to 1941 for Talcon, 25 for Paws, 18 for Sop Choppy, and 2117. So it's pretty close in line if you assume 2,000 gallons of usage.
Mr. Chairman, if I could jump in, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the young lady's name that just spoke, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I just calculated this based on 9,000 gallons. And what I'm seeing, based on what I proposed at 9,000 gallons, your monthly charge should go to $48.75. And I know that's still higher than what you're paying, and no one wants to see an increase. But, it's going to definitely, somebody check me if I'm wrong.
So you did 3 times 3.25 plus 3 times 3.75 plus 3 times 4.5.
Right, it's
Plus
48.
15.
Plus 15.
And that's exactly where I wanted to
That's
get
right.
to.
So we get to 48.75, which is still an increase. I think that if you look at it, that has been since 1999 since the rates have been increased, and you may or may not have been there all that time. I don't know, but the fact of the matter is, if we take the amount of increase here and we factor it over all the time, it's still a very modest increase. Really, prior boards should have been bumping that along. We've got I don't know if we even discussed it tonight, but we've got a charge of $40,000 to paint that tower that's there. It's a real charge that we have to incur. And so if the people that are using the water don't pay it, we're having to put it on the backs of the other people who don't even have access to use the water. So I think our goal is try to make this as fair as we possibly can, and it is an increase, but it just gets it more in line with what the other systems are paying.
I'm certainly not wanting to cause any undue hardship, but our system does have to pay for itself to where it does meet the operating. And I guess more than any other commissioner up here, I was on City of Sop Choppy for 7.5 years with our water system as much as we have, and anything that you do with these tanks costs money. $40,000 every few years in order to get it done. But I agree with Commissioner Thomas's plan. Like I said, it's not my wish to cause any undue hardship to anyone, but if we don't have our system pay for itself, we're going to have to pull that money from some other area to cover the shortfall.
Okay, you ready?
Also, just a point of clarification, as Commissioner Thomas has just said, the way this reads is from 0 to 3,000 is $3.25 per thousand. All right. Then once you go to 3,001 to 6,000, you're charged the $3.25 for your first 3,000. Then your next 3,000, you're charged $3.75 per thousand. And
it says $3,000 to $6,000 a meter usage.
Right.
So that's once you get above
But
3,
it says $3.75 per 1,000 gallons used.
right. In that tranche.
3,000 gallons. Up to 3,000 gallons. Per 1,000 gallons.
But Cleve, we're not going to,
Multiply each of those by 3.
I understand the confusion.
you're not going to build the first 3,000 at one rate, the next 3,000.
You're going to have
Sounds like your
5
income
different
tax.
rates to every single.
Yeah, that's customary. I mean,
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
As you go look at this is, if you don't, the step increments is trying to encourage conservation. And even if we can do this tonight, I don't think it's going to be not very long. I worked in South Florida. I guarantee in South Florida, the more water you use, your steps are extremely high. And it's something that we're talking to come back to eventually is to try to incur water conservation. The gentleman talked about watering his grass. I can tell you, meeting with the water districts in the Marion County area, they don't want you watering grass.
They actually discourage it. They don't want you to have a separate line separate from it.
Water is something, and utilities is something that, especially water, is not unlimited like we used to think it is. We come a couple of years ago, we had to monitor our water level monthly, and we were losing ground. We were actually talking about one time having to drill the well deeper. So this is to encourage water. And, again, unfortunately, the 110 people getting called up, this water system can easily handle 1,000 to 1,500 customers. It was never intended to be a standalone system for 110 people. It's before Randy's time, but I stood here before a commission years ago with a gentleman named Richard Griswold. He's the engineer that designed it.
I was here.
And he told the commissioners during a workshop that you either need to expand your system, and at one time we talked about going down 267 down to the towards St. Mark's and pick up some of that, and stop Tallahassee from coming into Wakulla County, or cut a deal with another local water system and give this up, because you have a water system capable of treating enough water for multiple, 1,500, 1,000 customers, no problem. And that's where the problem is. You don't have the economy of scale.
Right. I just want to thank Commissioner Thomas, because what you've proposed is really helping the citizens compared to what was before us.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay, so
One
this
thing I
is-
don't like about it is that I didn't think of it first, so. All for the motion?
Aye.
Motion passed. All right, David?
All right. Heather, you don't have any items, right? Okay. Number 18 is, this is an update to the board regarding the Department of Environmental Protection's Recreational to Trails Program grant. We've applied for this grant for walking trail improvements at Azalea Park and Hudson Park. I wanted to bring you guys up to date on that and also make sure one note.
Excuse me for 1 second. Are you on your items right now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I'm sorry, there was no commissioner agenda items, and the county attorney had no other items. You want to do citizen to be heard, Randy?
37, I figured David wouldn't take that long.
Huh?
Be done by
Okay, no, okay, sorry. Anyway,
I got it, Heather. I got it.
what this item does is this award is a $200,000 award, and what we're going to do is use we've already got programmed $300,000 for the improvements. All this will do is we'll use some of this money for our grant. We were going to be spending it anyway. This will actually give us the potential of adding $200,000 to this project of state money. We're moving forward with this grant. We'll be meeting with the RTP folks to go over the proposed project and be getting back to you guys hopefully with an award grant to approve that grant at that time. There's one thing, as part of this, we'll have to have certain public meetings, and on your second page of this agenda item under analysis, the second bullet is a presentation on March 4th. That's actually February 26th. Will be made before the Parks Advisory Committee. So I wanted to make sure that was read in the record. The other things, my other operational updates, community center, I don't even want to talk about that right now. We've hit it enough. Sheriff's Annex will be going out to bid for it in March.
Everybody okay with that before we?
So that'll all be, we got time on that. That'll all be in that. Also, to bring you up to date, scrap and scop projects, O'Clockney Street and High Drive, and also the Spring Creek Highway resurfacing will be going out we'll be putting out bids for those projects in 30 days. We'll be bringing the proposed contractor back to you guys for contract for those. The Emmett Whaley scrap and scop program, that'll be going out in about 60 days, and then it'll be on a 60-day cycle. So hopefully by end of summer, mid to late summer, we'll have all these projects completed. Okay?
Any questions for David? Go ahead.
Yeah, are these projects also including I didn't get to go over that, the Azalea Park project?
The scrap and scop projects?
Well, I'm specifically talking about playground.
No, so that was the $200,000 grant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What that will do is actually free up some of our 1-cent sales tax dollars that we had committed to that project to do other things such as what you're talking about.
Okay, and will that be coming back to us, the Azalea Park project?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for David?
I move to accept the update regarding DEP RTP grant for Azalea Park.
Second.
Motion is second. Any more discussion? All for the motion?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we'll do citizens to be heard. Mike Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Mr. Kessler, you ran for office and were elected to represent the good people of District 3. You told the good people of this county that you were willing to sacrifice and move into District 3 if elected. What I want to know is, where do you live? You have a homesteaded home in Panacea, which isn't in District 3, and you also have a house out by Lake Jackson, and that's certainly not in District 3. As a matter of record, in the Supervisor of Elections office, your address is 106 Old Steel Road, which happens to be in District 3, but that resident belongs to a different family altogether that's residing there. It's obvious, Mr. Kessler, that you, sir, have duped the good people of this county, and none of us know where you really live. It's true we're a small rural county, but I can tell you we like our public servants to be honest and transparent. and this charade of different addresses doesn't set well with most. For someone who has publicly prided themselves as wanting open and honest government, this doesn't come close to passing the smell test. But then again, most politicians just talk a good story. I hope the citizens hold you accountable for your dubious character. Thank you.
Jim Hillier?
I'll pass till next week. Thank you. You better come prepared.
All right. We'll be looking forward to it.
I saw your wife punch you.
You gotta beat all of it.
All right, Ralph, you got any discussion items?
I'd like to give you a quick update. I serve on the North Florida Broadband Authority, and we had a meeting last week in Madison. The authority was about to come out of the grant period and go live, where it now has to sustain itself financially. They got an extension through the end of April on that, and so we're almost at that point. We only have one or maybe two assets that we've identified that might even be a part of that system. The way it seems to me that they're kind of floundering out there, so it may or may not be anything that's ever viable for us. So their success is certainly not dependent upon whether we're involved. And at this point, all we can do is just kind of sit and wait the next 2 months and see if they go live. Their current expenses far exceed their current revenue. So unless they come up with a plan to sell and get a lot more customers on board, they're on borrowed time at this point.
Gary?
I have a question for David or Cleve or someone. For years and years and years, we've been trying to get sidewalks from the Elder Center down in Panacea. Half of the people ride in a little automatic buggy, and they're all in 98 Highway. Where are we on getting a sidewalk?
We've submitted that project as well as the senior center. We got the same problem, as you know, here in Crawfordville.
Okay.
To the CRTPA. It's on their watch list. We've submitted on DOT, and we're waiting for funding.
Okay, so that's on our funding request and whatever.
We want to do that. That's a high priority because it's dangerous. And
yeah, they're all motorized three-wheelers.
Right.
Whatever. Well,
Right.
good.
Cover rounds.
Yes, whatever you call
No
them.
trademark infringement, I hope.
On February 28th, on a Thursday, there's an Appalachia Bay Symposium at St. Mark's National Wildlife Refuge. That's at 1 o'clock until 4 o'clock. And the theme of this is going to be the canoe trail that we have received funding for and so forth. That trail is going to be made up of 5 segments, and I may not get it exactly right, but there will be a stopover in Panacea, a stopover at Skipper Bay, a stopover at Oyster Bay, and at Shell Point, and at St. Mark's. This is a canoe trail. And basically speaking, about every 5th car that you see on 98 highway's got a kayak on top of it. So it will have a certain benefit, and I'm sort of excited to see that. We'll have that. And one last item is the Senior Center is having a Western-themed dinner theater on Friday evening. There's a small charge for coming to that, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and all the monies go to the Senior Center. So if you don't have anything on your schedule for Friday evening, give the Senior Center a call and make reservations, because it's going to be a lot of fun. We may have Mr. Haskin there. He may be one of the characters, and that would be nice. I'll make that suggestion that you become one of the characters in that Western-themed dinner theater. So, yeah, I'll send that across. I think we can arrange that. But if you would, give the Senior Center a call and try to come out if you're not tied up on Friday night.
I'm fine.
Just out of curiosity on the first development, I guess, anybody know what the attendance was on the car show this weekend in St. Mark's? I went by Friday, there was about maybe people. Well, I was just curious. be nice to have somebody down here, Hot Roger community. I thought about the septic tanks when I talked about it on discussion items, and I think approaching it as a grant, possibly under Pot 2 or Pot 3 money, probably the best way to approach it. There didn't seem to be any real desire to spend county dollars on it, but maybe it could be a BP grant to inventory and possibly, as long as it didn't cost the citizens anything, fix old leaking septic tanks, not upgrade a performance space. But anyway, I thought I'd maybe suggest we try to apply for a grant and not say we're going to spend any county money on it.
I think that's not a problem. I think you would try to address those that are in sensitive areas first.
Exactly, yeah. Not just countywide, but in the spring.
But even in the springs, I think you would want to, if somebody's on 10 acres or 5 acres, go to that half-acre property that's close to a water body. And
agreed, but if you don't have a bottom in your septic tank, you're probably polluting the spring just as much if you're on a half acre or you're on a 10. You know what I mean? If it's failing.
I hear that.
It seems like things seem to be moving along on 319. I may just be deluding myself, but it seems to be getting a lot more attention now. Especially with the intermodal thing, and I notice it's a top priority on, what is that, Northwest Florida corridor?
Right.
That Scott Gaby represents us on. It's a top priority on there too, so
yep.
We may actually see something happening.
That'd be great if we did.
In a lifetime.
If we're surveying enough.
Yeah. In fact, he's going out now to look at different options of not having to get so much right of way. Yep. That's a big problem.
Yep.
One last thing, Howard, this isn't directly related to what you said last time about holding meetings later in the day. I want to know what y'all thought about holding earlier in the day. And the reason I'm saying that is I did a head count. There's 8 county employees in here, not including David, Heather, not including Brent or Cleve, not including the gentlemen from the Sheriff's Department that we're either paying comp time or overtime to be here. And I think maybe as a cost-saving measure, we could move the meeting back 2 or 3 o'clock. Wanted to see how y'all bounce it off. See what you thought about it. I'm not going to bring it up as an agenda item if I know it's going to fail. So.
Well,
I don't know if you could make it or not. You couldn't make
well,
it.
I mean, no. I mean, if we need to be here at 2 or 3, I'm able to be here. I mean, I'm flexible with that. But I do know, that we have a lot of citizens that do like to speak, and they work from 8 to 5. I wouldn't want us to put our citizens in a situation to where we wouldn't meet at a time to where if a citizen wanted to come speak to the commission that we were meeting while he's at work. There's another county I won't name. They meet at 10 o'clock in the morning. I mean, but there again, if a citizen wanted to speak, they would have to actually take time off from work to come, and or whatever time the board decides to meet, I'll be here to meet. But I am concerned with giving our citizens an opportunity to speak if they'd like to.
It's not
So
stifle citizen participation.
Right. Oh, I understand. But okay. So if we was to meet at 3, at what time would we still have the citizens meet? Talk at 6 or 6:30?
That's at the end of the meeting.
Well, at the end of the meeting, maybe 4 o'clock.
If it's
5 o'clock. You're right. That's the downside to it.
That'd be the downside.
If somebody wanted to speak, they would have to be here at the meeting early. That's the downside. And don't want to pursue it, then I'll drop it right now and we'll bring it up again. If there is any interest in it, I'll bring it up as an item.
Well, I'll weigh in on it. Don't have a lot of interest in it. We're here because the citizens voted us to be here. And we're here to serve them. And we know that the majority of our citizens work out of our county. Okay, we're a commuting county. So when these people are working up in Tallahassee or wherever, and they get off at 5 o'clock, it's a struggle for them to get here. They've already missed an hour or an hour and a half of a meeting, or they have to take off an hour from work. I mean, I think it's asking a whole bunch to ask these people to take off a half a day at work to make a board meeting. At the same time, when we've been here at board meetings in the evenings, this room has been packed. And dependent on the items that are coming forward from the board, to the board, apparently we weren't very interesting to the community this evening. But there are other times when we have standing room only. And that's
Right,
because...
next meeting may be packed, sounds
Yeah,
like.
next meeting maybe.
All right. Yeah, exactly. So I think we have to always be thinking first of how we affect the ability of the citizens to get to the meeting. And I think that having it during the daytime, although inconvenient to staff, is certainly much more inconvenient to community getting here during the daytime.
It does sound like there's really any traction on it. I was just thinking as a cost-saving measure.
I fully agree with you, and that would be a cost-saving measure, but I just, like I said, I want to be sure that our citizens have an opportunity to speak if they want to, without having to take off from work too early.
When you say speak, you mean under citizens be heard, or you mean on the agenda item?
Only under citizens be heard. I mean, I'm not, if they want to speak, if on an agenda item specifically, then, and they feel that strongly, then yes, they could use or leave them, but as far as the citizens to be heard section, I think we needed to allow that at a time to where our citizens that work 8 to 5 would be able to still address the board.
David had mentioned, Dave, didn't you tell me at one time somebody had, or Heather, maybe it was you, they had one monthly meeting in the day, and then one monthly meeting at night. The regular time where people could come. Is that something anybody be interested in? You used to do that? Really? Well, I saw one head nod. I saw two. Three. I'm going back to the agenda item. 4. I just saw 4.
But at the same time, I'd like to see that evening meeting move to a later time. If we're going to have a daytime meeting, then let's accommodate those people that are getting off from work.
I don't know if the meeting at 5, I'll bring the agenda item, but I don't know if the meeting at 5, I mean, we typically, where citizens be heard, 6:30, 7 o'clock, which I think most people make that. And like Richard's point was earlier, if you want to speak on an agenda item, I think you
feel strongly enough about it, to use to leave from work to be there, but the common citizens to be heard be at an hour that...
Well, no, I'm not really happy with that. I think that a citizen, we want to encourage citizens to participate in the government, not just to get up here and say something on the citizens to be heard. When there are items that we're voting on, I want to hear that citizen input. So I don't want to discourage that. I would be opposed to
It
that.
seems like I had some support to have one day meeting and one... I didn't know we used to do that, have we?
If you wanted to have a day meeting and a night meeting, I would be in favor of that as well. So, if you wanted to bring it to an agenda.
If I can make a comment on it, I'd hope that maybe Jennifer will put a comment in the newspaper and we can encourage citizens to tell us what they want. The way I see it, I think there's a lot more people that are watching it on television. And when I see the room empty, I think that people are probably generally happy, because when they're not happy, they're here. They fill it up and they let us know. And so I think we probably still have a lot of people participating, and if we do it during the day, they may not be able to if they're at work. But I'm certainly, my schedule, I'm willing to go with whatever, but I think we need to try to figure out what's going to be best for the...
You could also air that meeting, if you do choose to go to, say, a 10 o'clock meeting, you could air that meeting then, and also, we'd have to check, also at the same time that it would normally have been aired, so that's right.
But we got to remember the times changed too. We now have email at any time. Used to we had to go in, had to go into the office, get a paper copy, check their mailbox, and then get the email. You can check email on your phone. People can call you at any time about any item, at any time, and they can email you or call you. And so times have changed, of course.
But some things require a person to actually be here or to do something at the time of the public hearing, and when we're having...
As I have both gone to meet citizens on items.
I'll do the same thing.
That's important for us to do.
Well, I want to also add, like coming up beginning in March, we're going to be having some workshops ahead of the regular meeting. So coming up in March, we'll be meeting at a workshop at like 3 in the afternoon, and eventually carry over into the 5 o'clock, which works well as well to have them both the same day. Well, if we move the meeting earlier, then we'll either have the workshop even earlier in that day or after. So anyway, but if you wanted to bring it back up about alternating meetings, daytime and nighttime, I'd be in favor.
We would also need to check with Comcast if you want them to continue to be aired live. We would have to check their availability.
Richard, anything else?
I'm good.
All right, Howard.
Okay. Well, first, I just want to mention, since Commissioner Harden mentioned about workshops, on March 4th, 3:30 until 4:30, we have a workshop to discuss the sign ordinance or code. And this applies to business signs, historic signs, all the different signs around our county. So I just encourage the citizens, 3:30 to 4:30 on March 4th, and on March 18th, we're going to bring a workshop forward on the tobacco products in our county. And so I encourage the citizens also March 18th from 3:30 to 4:30. I'm going to be doing at the next board meeting an item that asks for the elimination of ordinance 93-12. That's the ordinance that refers to Griner's addition, that has some very strange language in it. Mobile homes of 2 years or 4 years. I think that whole ordinance has to go.
I think, Howard, if I'm not mistaken, that when that was adopted, the place was zoned homes only, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if anybody was around at the time, but I think there was some grand compromise made to allow mobile homes. Anyway, there's a history to it. It wasn't just like it's always been like that. That was back in the 90s, I think. It was zoned homes only, and it was allowed to change. So Dan Shepard would be excellent to ask about.
Okay, I'll catch up with him. Also, the effect of development and county actions on stormwater runoff is continuing to be in front of me, and I think in front of the other commissioners. Sometimes we think it's a good idea and we do something to a road or something, and then or allow a certain amount of development to happen, and we have other people that have never flooded before now getting flooded. So we'll be probably bringing back different issues concerning that to the board.
Agenda item? What
Probably.
sort of things? If you can give some idea.
Well, I think we need a policy on how to handle that residential runoff. I think we have to.
Involved for new development you're talking about, or for, give me an example of what you're talking about.
Well, two things. One is, here, going back to the Griner's addition, there's a road that you're familiar with. We closed it off. It used to hit Raywinkle. And
Dan's Drive.
right. So what effects does something like that have on water flow? Okay. So things like that, I think we have to look at, and I think we have to get in some kind of
So county
policy.
County actions, road maintenance even?
Before we go ahead and just, like, it's sort of like what we're trying to do tonight on the fly of making this 5-year plan for something, or, spending millions of dollars, before we say, hey, that's a great idea, we got to step back and really look at the consequences.
Interesting proposal.
And then I've gotten some complaints of Waste Pro trucks on small roads where I thought they were supposed to be using smaller trucks on those small roads, but they're sort of tearing up at least the ones I was called out to see. So I don't know really what to do with that. Do you have any suggestions?
Call in it. Right? That's probably that would be my best suggestion. Their charge would be in our liaison with Waste Pro, and their small truck to me still look like it's pretty big. I don't think they're any of them pickup size. Clay, maybe you can lighten us look.
Are we talking private roads or county maintained roads?
Any of them.
Well, this has a sign on it, and I think it's county road.
Two signs or three signs?
I don't know. I have to go back and take a look at it. I'm going to show you what I'm talking
Small
about.
truck is still a single axle, but it's a tandem wheel.
We take the calls and address it with Waste Pro, and they've been pretty good about adjusting the trucks to the road. So, but we just haven't got a complaint. I mean, just talk to me and we'll see what we can do. But Waste Pro has been pretty good about changing the size of trucks, and the complaints coming into the office have really dropped off over since the inception of the contract.
It's like a muddy road.
It was then.
But just give me a call and we'll take care of it.
Okay, great. Last thing.
Hold on. Commissioner Kessler, could you forward those pictures to Katie so we have them for the record?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Looked at them?
Yes.
Okay.
Any picture that we look at, we got to put it on record.
No problem. Coming your way as soon as the meeting ends. There was a vote that happened in the 1980s where the proposition of having Wakulla Springs become a state park was brought forward to our board to see what our board's stance on it was. You familiar with that?
That was a little bit before my time.
Okay. Well, it turns out, I won't go through there were a couple of votes that happened, but the first vote, it failed. Second vote, it passed, but only by a margin of 3-2. And what I'd like to do is to recognize those commissioners that stood up for the preservation of Wakulla Springs.
Making it a state park, supporting it.
Yes.
I do remember when it was private.
And they passed a resolution to that effect, for the state to buy those lands, okay? Supporting the state purchase of those lands. So, I would like, if the board would consider a resolution from the board. In addition, I will provide 3 plaques with the person's name on it, thanking them for standing up for Wakulla Springs, for saving Wakulla Springs.
I don't necessarily have a problem. Let's see, you're paying for the flag, right?
Yes.
Okay. Who were the 3?
Who were the 3?
The 3 are Billy Porter, Murray McLaughlin, and Wilhelmina Cronin.
Sounds good to me.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
I'm in favor of it, and I think it'd be a good thing. I think for historical reasons, people will need to know.
Well, if that's the condition, could I get a vote on that here, as far as, is it unanimous?
If you want to just, you're paying for the plaques and making them. I don't think anybody.
You want to make a motion? I'll second it.
I'll make a motion that the board, provide a resolution, recognizing.
Are you going to present the resolution?
I will prepare. I will try to do that. I will prepare the resolution.
If you're going to actually prepare a resolution, you want to just vote on it then?
Well, I could do it then, and then maybe we can actually have the survivor.
Let's vote before he spends the money and
Let's vote for him to proceed. I mean, he's made a motion, I second the motion.
All for it? All right.
All right.
All right, pass.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it.
More items? Anybody will tell me anything else? All right, let's get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yep.